Like a lot of people, I don't like YouTube ads. I have my finger on the skip ad button ready to go, so I don't have to hear about Sofia Vergara's son's bad dandruff any more than the next person. But there's those other ads, like the 10 to 20-second ones that feel like they take 10 minutes, and for some reason, you can't skip them. I don't want to hear about J.B. Pritzker's house with no toilets, but for some reason, I have to. Think about that, though. Who chose that for me? Even if I choose the videos that I watch and the articles that I read, do I really get to choose the content that I'm consuming? We're consuming media all day, and more often than not, it's coming to us through a screen. But one of the most substantial issues in our country right now is miscommunication and ill-informed use of media, especially in politics. This past summer, I worked with Chicago Summer Stories to create a 5-minute documentary highlighting the activism that takes place in the city of Chicago. Within this project, we interviewed 6 individuals, yielding over 2 hours of footage that we had to cut down into 5 minutes. Now, I felt a great amount of pressure with this because these people told us their real, genuine, honest stories.
Before Ferguson, I didn't consider myself an activist in any way.
Both my parents were incarcerated when I was a baby. My mother went to prison right after I was born. My father went to prison right before I was born.
I was just broken. You know, I wasn't around my biological mother. I couldn't understand why she didn't want me. Then the only person I did love died. And then the person that was left to take care of us didn't care for us.
These people told us their real, genuine, honest stories, and I wanted to make sure when dealing with this content that I didn't miscommunicate any of their words. Now, I would call this ethical editing, but as much as I'd like to think other people do this too, not all people that create the content that you see have your best intentions in mind. When creating any form of content, the creator starts with a great amount of material, and they have to cut it down over time until they reach a thing that's ready for public consumption. You know, this happens not only in my documentary, but this happens in all the media that we consume, especially in the news. The President Trump, his most recent State of the Union address was 1 hour and 22 minutes. The New York Times put out a recap video of this that was 3 minutes and 15 seconds. That means that there's 1 hour and 19 minutes of footage spoken by the president that New York Times consumers will never hear unless they seek it out themselves. Now, this leads for a lot of room for personal bias and unethical editing. Personal bias and unethical editing are everywhere, but what happens when you don't catch it? Well, when something's unethically edited, it's really made to persuade the audience to believe something is true when it might not be. In terms of the New York Times video, they could take any words said by the president and put it in any order they wish to get their agenda across, but that might not be the whole story. Maybe that's not sticking with you, though. So let's look at the most important TV show on, like right now, The Bachelor. The producers can take any of parts of this show, anything said by the women, and cut it up however they want, including certain parts and leaving others out. And once they put the right music under it, they've created a story that was never there in the first place. So we can connect the increasing gaps in the increase of social media with the increasing gap in the political divide. As you can see by this graph provided by Pew Research Center, from 1994 until 2017, the divide between Democratic and Republican parties has split dramatically. But through that time, so has the increase in social media has risen greatly. In 1994, how you consume news and media is much different than we do now. In 1994, you had radio, television, and newspaper, and through that, you didn't really have much of a choice. When you wanted to listen to a song, you would listen to the radio, and you'd wait for that song to play. You listened to songs you didn't want to hear in the meantime, but you waited to hear that one song. Now, with streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, you get to choose exactly what you want to hear, exactly when you want to hear it. We even pay to get rid of ads to make sure we hear it faster. With that, we're surrounding ourselves with ideas that we like, ridding ourselves of conflicting ideas that might widen our perspective. There's too much content online for one person to consume all of it. When's the last time that you went down to the bottom of your Google search and hit page 2? No one can consume everything out there, but if you surround yourself with similar ideas, we're not going to grow as a society. So I create media, and so I'm aware that I have to work on my personal bias that I portray in my projects. But it's not just me. This is a two-way street. When we consume media, we have to be aware not only of what we're clicking on, but what it really represents. When we click on something because of the title or something like that, it contributes to this algorithm that gives us back more of the same content, ultimately getting rid of things that oppose our viewpoints. So when we do this, we're surrounding ourselves with similar ideas, ridding us from wanting to compromise. So I would urge you to not only be aware of what you're consuming and to, try to reach out, but question not only the content, but how it makes you feel. Question the people that made that content, especially when it's politically charged. I'm not going to tell you to change all of your media habits, because that's unrealistic, but it's clear that media consumption is an issue. So maybe for you, that's listening to 30 seconds of CNN or Fox News a day, because that's all that you can handle. Or maybe it's openly seeking out articles and podcasts to try to expand your viewpoints. But unless we all individually seek out the other side, we're not going to grow anywhere as a society or be willing to compromise. Thank you.